I'm a 35-year-old woman, and my husband is 36. We've been a couple for 13 years and married for 11. My husband is without question his mom's golden child. Whenever I mention that he has done even the smallest thing wrong, she acts completely shocked and demands evidence before she'll believe it. My mother-in-law is an extremely religious Christian and happens to be married to the pastor. She's the type who records every single church service and forwards the video to anyone who didn't attend. When I first met my husband, he was the picture of purity, homeschooled, sheltered, the whole package. Over the years, I've definitely been the one to lead him astray. Here's what happened. My in-laws stopped by our house after church today, and my mother-in-law needed the bathroom. She used the one connected to our master bedroom, which has doors to both of our walk-in closets. We keep our bedroom toys in my closet. She opened it, saw everything, and completely lost it. She stormed out, started yelling at both of us, and I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing because the whole situation was absurd. They left shortly after, and since then she's blown up my husband's phone multiple times, getting more and more hysterical with every call. I still think the entire thing is comedy gold. My husband is mortified and annoyed that I'm treating it like a joke. He says we've scarred his mother for life, and he's genuinely upset about that. I say she scarred herself. She had zero business digging through my closet in the first place. Should I say sorry to my husband for laughing so hard? He admits she shouldn't have been nosy, but he thinks my response was inappropriate and that I should have tried to calm the situation instead of cracking up. Not the asshole. How exactly were you supposed to smooth it over? Claim a burglar broke in just to plant sex toys? Say they belong to the previous owners? Insist they're specially shaped dog toys? The whole thing is ridiculous, and she brought it on herself. Keep your chin up. This is your marriage, you're both grown adults, and a prying, judgmental woman needs to stay in her own lane and allow her grown son and daughter-in-law to live however they want. Exactly. And she's making everything 10 times worse by continuing to obsess over it. Calling repeatedly and working herself into a frenzy? That's entirely self-inflicted. Most normal people would pretend they saw nothing and never speak of it again. What does she even want at this point? An apology tour? Public penance? There's an old joke. A lady calls the cops to report a man exposing himself across the street. When the police arrive, she hands them binoculars and says, "Here, you'll need these to see him properly." That's basically your mother-in-law. Tell her Jesus might forgive the snooping. Might. Actually, no, probably not. Tell your husband she made the active choice to open a closet she had no reason to open. She's not traumatized, she's trying to guilt and manipulate him into being ashamed of a perfectly normal married sex life, and to pressure you both into getting rid of everything. Remind him she was clearly inspecting your private space, looking for things to judge, and her meltdown is not your responsibility or his. You're not in charge of managing her emotions. She could have kept quiet, but she chose drama. If she doesn't have to apologize for invading your privacy, you certainly don't have to apologize for owning adult toys. My boyfriend, 29M, and I, 29F, have been together 3 years. He's always treated me well. Earlier this year, we bought a house together and moved in this past March. Our very first night in the new place was a Saturday. He asked if it was okay to go out with his buddies, and of course I said yes. He's never had to ask permission, but he likes to check anyway. He never came home that night and wasn't answering his phone Sunday morning. I panicked, called his family to see if he'd crashed there, and when they said no, I actually drove around the city from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. terrified he'd been hurt or passed out somewhere. He finally walked in around 11 a.m. Sunday. He said he'd gotten wasted and slept it off on a friend's couch. I told him please never do that again, it really hurt, especially on the first night we'd been so excited about after waiting 18 months to close on the house. But he did it again. For more times between March and August. Every single time he was blackout drunk, crashed at a friend's or his mom's, and never sent so much as a text to let me know he wasn't coming home. I begged, I cried, I pleaded after each incident, and he swore every time it would never happen again. I ended things at the start of September, and he moved out to his parents. This wasn't the only problem, but it was a huge one. I simply couldn't trust anything he promised anymore. We attempted to reconcile around Halloween. The weekend right after Halloween, he went out Friday night with friends again. He hadn't fully moved back in yet, and didn't come home until 10 a.m. Saturday. It triggered me hard. I confronted him. His position is that I'm blowing it out of proportion, and that not knowing where he is all night isn't the big deal I make it out to be. He thinks it's unreasonable for me to expect him to come home when he goes out drinking. We argued, I cried, I told him I felt completely dismissed and disrespected. He promised yet again it wouldn't happen. I told him promises don't mean anything anymore. He insisted he'd prove it this time. Fast forward a week. Saturday he went to his family's place to hang out and stayed the night, totally fine. He told me in advance. Sunday he stayed there longer, then went to watch football with friends and said he'd be home after the games. He got hammered. At 11 p.m., he called asking if I'd drive his friend home, a 45-minute trip each way, and I had work early Monday, so I said no. Radio silence after that. Monday morning, I woke up alone. He finally texted an apology. I told him we were done for good. He got furious, said I was overreacting again and being unfair. Am I? If you're 29 and blacking out every few weeks, you have an alcohol problem. Not the asshole. This is your life too, and you're clearly more invested in the relationship than he is. Don't tie yourself to someone who isn't as committed as you are. Yeah, his biggest issue right now isn't a breakup, he needs help with drinking. You've seen exactly what your future looks like with him. Is that the future you want? But is it really alcohol, or is he using "I got too drunk" as cover for hooking up with someone else? There's no mention of him ever drinking heavily at home, or when you're out together. We knew a guy who pulled the same "oops, too drunk, crashed at a buddy's" routine constantly, and it turned out he was picking up women at bars most of those nights. Sometimes he actually did just crash at a friend's, but the majority were cheating cover stories. His wife ignored all the red flags, and their family is a wreck now. My husband's sister adopted a little one 4 years ago. She talked for years about possibly becoming a single mom by choice, and when a close friend had a baby she no longer wanted to raise, it felt like the right fit, so she stepped in. Everyone in the family supported it and adored the child. About 2.5 years ago, my sister-in-law was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Her health declined fast, and she asked my husband and me to take over raising the child if needed. We didn't have kids yet, so we agreed. We made sure she still saw the little one regularly, and she asked us to keep raising the child no matter what happened to her. I'm saying the child for privacy. My husband never treated the kid any differently, just like a loving uncle stepping up. Recently, my sister-in-law sat me down and confessed that my husband is actually the biological father. She explained that he used to casually sleep with her best friend years ago, had one final hookup right before our wedding, and this child is the result of that infidelity. I felt physically ill. She said she couldn't die with the lie and wanted to come clean before it somehow came out later. I confronted my husband. He denied it at first, so I insisted on a paternity test. The results are undeniable. He's the father. He swore nothing has happened since we married, that he loves me, that it was one drunken mistake, and he begged for forgiveness. Then he suggested we adopt the child officially and raise them as ours, that we could still be a family and this doesn't have to destroy us. I've been staying with my sister since the results came back. I'm repulsed. I know the child is blameless, but every time I look at them now I see my husband's betrayal, and I cannot imagine pretending to be their mother while staying married to him. My sister-in-law has apologized over and over and told the rest of their family everything. My in-laws have been blowing up my phone trying to convince me to come home, saying I have a family now and can't abandon them, especially when their daughter can't raise the child herself anymore. Their messages turned guilt-trippy and nasty when I refused counseling and reconciliation, so I blocked them. I don't see any path forward. I've been in this child's life since day one and have been their primary caregiver for over 1.5 years, but I know I could never be a healthy, loving parent to them carrying this knowledge. Am I the asshole for wanting to divorce and walk completely away? Not the asshole at all. He can raise his own biological child. His family can help him. I would never recover from that level of betrayal. Being drunk is no excuse. Your sister-in-law would have happily kept raising the child, and your husband would have kept pretending to be the uncle if her conscience, or desire for good karma points, hadn't kicked in. You don't owe anyone forgiveness just because someone is sick. There's a story from decades ago about my friend's aunt. Her husband traveled to Malaysia a lot for work and eventually suggested they adopt a little boy from there, said it would be a kind thing to do for a child in need. They flew over together to meet the toddler. The wife took one look at the kid, turned to her husband and said, "You think I'm an idiot? That's obviously your son." She turned around, changed her flight to the earliest one home, and divorced him. I never met that woman, but I've always admired her backbone and self-respect. Get your affairs in order immediately and divorce him. He can adopt and raise his own child.